The flight to Los Angeles began like any other. A calm September afternoon, clear skies, and a sense of routine filling the air. The aircraft, Flight 482, was packed with passengers, businessmen rushing from meetings, families on vacation, students returning to campus. Smiles, chatter, the clink of coffee cups, everything felt ordinary. No one on board could have guessed how extraordinary the journey was about to become. In seat 24A, a man adjusted his tie nervously, scrolling through emails. In 14C, a young mother tried to calm her baby while a stewardess offered a reassuring smile. All across the cabin, lives unfolded in small, unimportant ways. But hidden in seat 22B by the window, sat a woman whose very existence was a secret thought long erased. She was known once as Commander Rachel Stone. To the public, she was gone, dead, a tragedy lost to classified missions. Reported in news snippets nearly 7 years ago, a name written on memorial walls, a photograph framed with a black ribbon, a story people whispered about but never fully understood. The world believed she had perished in the wreckage of a secret operation, and she had wanted it that way. Now she sat quietly, wearing a plain sweater and jeans, hair tied back, face hidden behind sunglasses. To anyone passing by, she was nobody, just another traveler. Her posture was calm, but her eyes, when they occasionally flickered to the window, carried storms. At the front of the plane, Captain Miller, a man in his late 50s, smiled as he adjusted his headset. A steady, seasoned pilot, the kind passengers trusted without knowing his name. His first officer, younger, sharper, carried the eagerness of someone rising in his career. Together they chatted lightly about weather reports and landing schedules, unaware that destiny was about to tear their flight into history. It started as a cough. Miller waved it off, pressing a handkerchief to his lips, but his chest tightened. A flash of dizziness, a burning pain behind his ribs. He tried to hide it, to keep his voice steady, but within moments, his strength failed him. His hands slipped from the controls, eyes rolling back as his body slumped sideways in the seat. The first officer froze. "Captain? Captain, talk to me!" He shook him, panic growing in his voice. Miller didn't respond. His breathing was shallow, his face pale, lips trembling. The aircraft jolted slightly as the younger pilot's hands fumbled at the yoke. Alarms began to blink across the console, altitude shifting, heading skewing. "Flight attendants to the cockpit immediately." His voice cracked through the intercom. Back in the cabin, passengers stirred uneasily at the sudden turbulence. A baby cried. Coffee spilled. Whispers rose. The flight attendants rushed forward, their faces masks of forced calm. And then, Rachel moved. She had promised herself she would never touch that life again. 7 years of silence, 7 years of hiding, 7 years of being a ghost. But the sound of those alarms, the sight of fear in the first officer's eyes when she reached the cockpit doorway, it was like muscle memory being dragged back from the grave. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice firm, low. The young pilot's hands trembled. "The captain! He's down! I can't! He's not breathing right! I don't know!" His words tumbled out in panic. Rachel's gaze cut across the cockpit. The captain slumped, barely conscious. The instruments blinking like angry eyes. Her heart kicked into overdrive. This was it. The line she had promised never to cross again. But she couldn't watch 300 lives fall from the sky. "Move," she said. The first officer blinked. "What? Move!" Her tone carried authority he had never heard from a passenger. Instinctively, he shifted just enough for her to step inside. She slid into the jump seat, her hands already scanning the panels, her eyes locking onto the horizon indicator. Altitude, throttle. It all came back. The rhythm, the hum, the dance of survival in the air. The radio crackled. "Flight 482, you're deviating from course." "Confirm status." The young pilot's throat closed up. He reached for the mic, but Rachel's hand was already there. She pressed the button, her voice calm, commanding. "This is First Officer Young. We have a medical emergency. Captain incapacitated. Request immediate assistance and emergency priority." There was a pause, then the calm but tense voice of air traffic replied. "Copy 482, hold course. We'll reroute for emergency landing." She released the mic, inhaled deeply, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt it. Control. But she wasn't the only one listening. Another channel cut in, sharper, colder. Flight 482, this is Falcon Command. You have deviated from transponder protocol. Confirm identity. Her blood chilled. Falcon Command. Military oversight. She had heard those voices once in another life. The kind of voices that could turn an accident into an international crisis. The first officer looked at her nervously. Why would they contact us? Because they think this is more than an accident, she thought. Because they know. The seconds stretched like hours. Then came the words that froze her blood. Passenger Rachel Stone, Valkyrie 7. Do you copy? Her chest tightened, her breath caught. The call sign, the name she had buried with her past. 7 years of silence undone in a heartbeat. The first officer stared at her, eyes wide. They called you. Her voice was steel, low and sharp. Don't ask. Just fly, but it was too late. The ghosts of her past had found her again. Outside the windows, shadows sliced the clouds. 2 F-22 Raptors locked into formation, their silver wings glinting under the sun, close enough for passengers to see. Gasps filled the cabin, fear spreading like fire. Children cried, adults clutched their seats, voices rising in terror. The intercom chimed again, the military voice harsher now. Valkyrie 7, identify yourself. 7 years ago, you were declared dead. Explain. Her grip tightened on the controls. She hadn't wanted this. She had chosen to vanish. But the sky had no hiding places left. She pressed the mic, her voice steady despite the storm inside. This is Valkyrie 7, she said. The words tasted like ash, and I'm not dead. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. For the first time in 7 years, Rachel Stone had spoken her name to the sky. And now, there was no turning back. The silence inside the cockpit after her words was suffocating. Every breath felt like a drumbeat. Rachel had broken the ghostly barrier of her past, and now the world was listening. The first officer stared at her as though seeing a phantom. You really are? Valkyrie 7. His voice shook, more from disbelief than fear. She kept her eyes on the instruments, her hands steady. Focus on the plane. The passengers don't need our ghosts. But outside, the F-22 Raptors tightened formation, their sleek bodies slicing through the clouds with predatory precision. From the cabin windows, passengers pointed, whispering in panic. To them, fighter jets meant only one thing: danger. The radio cracked again. Valkyrie 7, this is Falcon Command. You are instructed to divert immediately to Base Echo. Any deviation will be treated as hostile intent. The first officer grabbed the mic before she could. Negative, Falcon. We are civilian Flight 482 with medical emergency. Captain incapacitated. Requesting clearance to nearest airport, not a military base. The line hissed, then a cold reply. This is not a request. Redirect now. Rachel's jaw tightened. She knew that tone. The military didn't ask. They ordered. And if ignored, they enforced. The young pilot looked at her, fear glistening in his eyes. They'll shoot us down if we don't comply, won't they? Her gaze flickered to the Raptors gliding outside, silent predators. She had flown missions beside them once, had trusted those very wings to save her life. Now they were weapons pointed at her. Not yet, she muttered. Not unless we give them reason. The intercom crackled to life, a flight attendant's panicked voice filling the cockpit. We need instructions. Passengers are panicking. People are asking why there are military jets outside. Rachel reached for the switch. This is the cockpit. Remain calm. We are handling the situation. Keep passengers seated and buckled. But even as she said it, she knew calm was bleeding out of the cabin like sand from a cracked glass. 7 years of hiding had collapsed in minutes. The world thought she had perished during Operation Seraph, a mission so classified that even whispers could bury careers. The truth was darker. She had survived when no one else did. Survived, but at a cost so steep she'd chosen exile. Now, here she was, dragged back by fate, her secret burned into the open sky. Valkyrie 7, the radio barked again, sharper now. We have orders to escort you. Confirm your intentions. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Hearing echoes of her past, the screams in her headset, the flames rising from the ocean, the betrayal she had never spoken of. Her voice was steady when she finally replied. My intention is to land this plane safely with 300 souls alive. You interfere, and their blood is on your hands." The silence that followed was heavy. The first officer whispered, "They're not going to like that." "They don't have to like it," Rachel replied. "They just have to stand down." But she knew they wouldn't. Military command didn't stand down. And if they had called her Valkyrie, then somewhere, someone at a high level had already confirmed her identity. They knew she wasn't supposed to be alive, which meant they also feared what she might reveal. A passenger screamed in the cabin as one of the F-22s rolled closer, its wings tilting as though showing off its missiles. Fear rippled through the plane like electricity. Rachel pressed the intercom again, her voice calm but unyielding. "This is Commander Stone. I'm a trained pilot. I have control of this aircraft. We will be safe. Stay in your seats." For a moment, the cabin stilled, her voice carrying authority that no one could mistake. The passengers clung to that assurance like a lifeline. But the young pilot turned to her, face pale. "Commander, 7 years ago, why did they say you were dead?" Her eyes stayed on the horizon. Because it was easier than the truth. The engines roared, the plane trembling slightly as they cut through a pocket of turbulence. Her fingers adjusted the trim, instincts taking over where logic should have drowned her. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to exist. And yet, fate had dragged her into the storm. Suddenly, the radio changed frequency. A softer voice, almost personal, cut through. "Rachel, if you can hear this." "It's me." Her heart froze. That voice. A voice she had mourned, grieved, buried. "No," she whispered. The first officer frowned. "Who is that?" She didn't answer. Her throat locked. The voice came again, steadier this time. "Rachel, it's Adrian. You weren't supposed to be alive. You weren't supposed to—" Her hands shook on the controls. Adrian, her mission commander. The man who was supposed to have died with the rest of her squad in Operation Seraph. The man whose face haunted her nightmares. But if he was alive, then everything she believed was a lie. The Raptors shifted formation again, hemming the plane in like shepherd dogs around lost sheep. Passengers clung to each other, tears spilling, whispers of prayer filling the cabin. Rachel forced her voice to work. "If you're Adrian, prove it." A pause. Then, "Valkyrie, on Seraph's final day, I told you the ocean takes what it wants. You told me you weren't ready to drown. That's why you jumped. That's why you survived." Her lungs squeezed. Only Adrian could have known that. Only he had heard her say those words before she leapt into the storm of fire and steel. The first officer's voice cracked. "Commander, what does this mean?" "It means," she whispered, "the dead aren't as buried as we thought." But before she could say more, a blaring alarm ripped through the cockpit. A warning light flashed. Fuel imbalance. The first officer cursed. "We're leaking! Tank 3 is dropping pressure!" Rachel's mind snapped back to the present. Panic could come later. Now lives depended on her. Shut crossfeed. Reroute flow through tanks 1 and 2. Keep her balanced. Her hands moved with precision, cutting off valves, adjusting flow, fighting to keep the bird steady. The plane groaned like a living beast, resisting her every command. The military voice returned, hard as steel. "Valkyrie 7, your aircraft is compromised. Divert now or we take control." Rachel's voice was a blade. "You fire on us and you kill 300 civilians. Do it, and the world will know the truth about Seraph. Is that what you want?" The silence that followed was explosive. She had crossed a line, threatened exposure of the mission they had buried in shadows. The first officer stared at her in awe and terror. "Commander, what did you just do?" She tightened her grip on the yoke, eyes locked on the horizon. "I just made sure they can't kill us without killing themselves." But deep inside, she knew the storm was only beginning. Because Adrian was alive. Because the military wasn't backing down. And because the past she had buried 7 years ago had just clawed its way back into the light. The cockpit felt smaller by the minute, like the walls themselves were tightening in on them. Red warning lights still blinked angrily across the panel, fuel readings uneven, but the aircraft held steady under Rachel's grip. Outside, the F-22 Raptors kept close, like watchful hawks circling prey. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady when she pressed the mic again. "Falcon Command, listen to me carefully. I am Rachel Stone, Valkyrie 7. This aircraft is not a threat. I am bringing it down safely. Stand down. or you will have to explain to the entire world why you forced 300 civilians into a grave." There was silence. Too much silence. The first officer glanced nervously at her. "They're not answering. They're deciding," Rachel muttered. "Whether I'm still their asset or their enemy." A cold thought burned in her mind. They couldn't let her land freely. Not alive, not with the truth she carried. If Adrian was truly alive, it meant the mission's end wasn't what she believed. Someone had lied. Someone had rewritten history. And the moment she touched the ground, that truth could unravel the people who had buried it. The radio crackled. Adrian's voice again, so familiar, so haunting. "Rachel, listen to me. Don't fight them. Let the Raptors guide you in. It's the only way you'll survive." Her jaw tightened. Survive? With 300 passengers being dragged to a military base they'll never leave. That's not survival. You don't understand, Adrian's voice pressed. The mission never ended. Operation Seraph wasn't a failure, it was containment. If the truth leaks, if they know what we uncovered that day, it will start a war that makes everything else meaningless. The first officer blinked, his hands frozen on the controls. "What are you talking about?" "What war?" Rachel's blood ran cold. She remembered fragments, chaos, fire, encrypted data they were supposed to secure, and the sea swallowing the wreckage. She had believed it was an ambush, but if Adrian was alive, if they had called it containment, then the ambush had been orchestrated. She closed her eyes. "Adrian, if you're truly alive, then tell me one thing. Did you betray us?" Silence. The kind of silence that confirms the truth without a single word. Her hands tightened on the yoke, fury rising in her chest. The squad she lost, the blood on her hands, her years of exile. It wasn't fate. It was betrayal. The raptors outside tilted their wings in warning, their sleek bodies shimmering like blades against the sun. A voice, colder, official, cut in.
"Valkyrie 7, this is your final warning.
Redirect to base, Echo. Comply or we engage." Passengers screamed as one of the jets surged closer, its nose angled, a predator poised to strike. Rachel slammed the mic. "If you fire on us, you confirm everything. Every lie, every cover-up, do it. And the world will know Seraph's truth." For a moment, even the engines sounded quiet, as if the sky itself held its breath. The first officer whispered, "What truth?" "Commander, you need to tell me what's happening." Her voice cracked, for the first time showing the weight of 7 years. "That we didn't die because of the enemy. We died because of our own." The cabin lights flickered as turbulence ripped through the plane, the passengers crying out, prayers rising like smoke. Rachel steadied the aircraft with practiced precision, her muscles aching, her throat dry, her soul burning with memories she could no longer bury. The radio hissed. Adrian's voice came again, desperate. "Rachel, don't do this! Don't expose it. You'll damn us all." Her reply was a whisper of steel. "We were damned the moment you betrayed us." The young pilot looked at her, his face pale but resolute. "Then what's the plan?" Rachel's eyes flickered to the altimeter, the dwindling fuel gauge, the distant glimmer of city lights below. "The plan is survival, not just for us, but for the truth." She yanked the controls, banking hard to the left. The aircraft shuddered violently, passengers screaming as the Raptors scrambled to adjust. One darted closer, warning shots streaking the sky, but Rachel forced the jetliner through a dive, dropping altitude fast. The first officer gasped. "They'll shoot us down." "Not if I make them look like monsters on live radar," she snapped. Her fingers danced across the transponder, flipping emergency signals, broadcasting distress codes that civilian towers would intercept. The whole region would see Flight 482 as a plane under attack. The Raptors hesitated, their orders colliding with the sudden visibility of the situation. To fire now would be to commit murder in front of the entire world. Rachel seized the opening, leveling the aircraft at a lower altitude, the city stretching wide beneath them like a promise. Adrian's voice thundered in her ear, furious now. "Rachel, stop this! You think you're saving them, but you're unleashing something you can't control." She ignored him, her hands iron on the controls. "I'd rather unleash the truth than live another day in their lies." The runway lights of Los Angeles International glittered ahead, a beacon through the darkness. The first officer called in coordinates, voice cracking with urgency while Rachel steadied the descent, every muscle in her body screaming against the strain. Behind them, the Raptors hung back, leashed by the fear of exposure. The passengers held their breath as the aircraft roared lower, the earth rushing up to meet them. Rachel's mind tunneled, every thought consumed by the landing, speed, angle, weight. Her ghosted squad whispered in her memory, guiding her hands. The wheels slammed against the tarmac, the aircraft screaming as it fought the momentum, brakes burning, metal groaning. The cabin shook with the force of survival. Then silence. A trembling, fragile silence. They had landed, alive. The passengers erupted in sobs, cheers, prayers of gratitude. The young pilot collapsed back in his seat, eyes wide with disbelief. "You did it. You actually did it." Rachel's hands shook on the yoke, her chest heaving, but her eyes remained cold, distant. Because she knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of war. On the horizon, the Raptors circled once, then peeled away into the night, silent predators retreating to the shadows. The military would not forgive this. Adrian would not forgive this. And Rachel Stone, Valkyrie 7, was no longer dead. She was alive, exposed, hunted. She whispered to herself, almost too softly to hear. The sky remembers its ghosts, and so do I. The sirens of approaching ground crews wailed outside. Passengers wept with relief, unaware that they had just become witnesses to a secret that governments would kill to protect. Rachel unclipped her harness, rising slowly. For 7 years she had lived as a shadow, but shadows only survive in silence, and she was done being silent. As she stepped out of the cockpit to face the trembling passengers who looked at her like a savior, the truth burned in her chest like fire. The world thought she was dead. Now it would know she was alive, and it would never be the same again.